Kubernetes community can be a great place for you to participate. If you like what you see, there's always room for you to be a contributor in different ways. Contributor experience is here to be that jump off point for you. So please join us in our Slack or any of our regular meetings, and we will get you oriented and onboarded to a special interest group and get you rolling. But with that, we'll just jump right into the fray here. Jorge is going to give us an update on the current release. Jorge, are you there?
We can move on to the SIGs, and then if he shows up, get back to him.
You got it. Thanks, George. All right, we'll keep going. So moving on to the SIGs for the sake of time, we're going to kick it off this week with the steering committee, who have a few minutes to give us an update. Nikita, would you take it away, please?
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Awesome. So starting with the steering committee update. This is the first update after the last election. So we've got some new members now. Right now it's Christoph, Derek, Dims, myself, Paris, Aaron, and Tim on the steering committee. Please feel free to reach out to us. These are our Slack and GitHub handles, and you can also find more info in the Kubernetes/steering repo. So I'm going to cut right to the chase and talk about something that we've been working on since the past month and something that's going to affect the community as a whole. So we are planning on setting up a program called Community Health Check, or a roll call similar to what Apache does. So SIG leads or SIG chairs will fill out a questionnaire about the health of their SIG, and the steering committee will review their answers. If the steering committee has more questions, or we feel that there is merit in discussing certain aspects, we will invite the SIG chairs to the SIG Chair TL monthly meeting to discuss more about it. And yeah, so to understand more about how this would look like, so what are the questions that this questionnaire would contain? The idea is to make sure that all SIGs are growing contributors. They have a sustenance plan in place for leads, and also that if they have any pain points, we can address them and fix those problems. So the questions are going to look something like, what are your chair TL goals for the SIG, or what programs is the SIG participating in that can help grow contributors throughout the contributor ladder, or how can the steering committee jump in and help the SIG overall. And we also want to make sure that this meeting takes place in the SIG Chair TL monthly meeting. And if you don't already know about it, it's a meeting that happens monthly in 2 time zones. I think there are 2 meetings to cater to all time zones. So if you're a SIG lead or SIG chair or TL, you can attend that. And we want to make sure that this discussion happens in that meeting so that other leads can pitch in and SIGs can take inspiration from each other as well. And we certainly don't want any more meetings, I'm pretty sure. And we are also setting up a Boson guide for the steering committee meeting. So for those of you who don't know, we have a public monthly steering committee meeting. And we really felt that having a Boson guide and script would help in making sure like the agenda is published to the mailing list before the meetings, the notes are published after the meetings, and all steering members have adequate context and come prepared so that we don't spend too much time discussing or debating in the meeting itself, which I know has happened in the past. So we want to make sure that meetings are much more efficient and effective for everyone. Next up, we are planning on cleaning up some of the inactive repos in the main Kubernetes GitHub org. If you've already seen some, if you're already on the mailing lists of some SIGs, you might have seen that we are also cleaning up repos in the Kubernetes incubator GitHub org. So we're moving them to Kubernetes SIGs, or we feel like there aren't enough people contributing to it or it's not needed anymore, we are moving them to Kubernetes. We're just archiving them and moving them to the Kubernetes retired org. We plan to do the same thing with the Kubernetes GitHub org as well, just go over the existing repos, make sure they're active, see what we can do to increase contributors and things like that. And we'll be working with the GitHub admin team from SIG Contributor Experience for it. Also, if you are a SIG lead or chair who has a repo in the main org, expect an email about this in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to take a look at what repos you have right now, that would be amazing. The other thing that we've been working on, and this is a really sort of a tough problem to solve, is like, say you're an approver for some part of the code base and you want help with the task like that's a little bit of a bigger task, like say migrating a part of the code base that would take certain weeks or even months. So you want to make sure that you don't get drive-by contributions for such tasks, and contributors stick around when they show up. So we are looking at crafting policies to define policies and tools to help with this. We have used the role board on discuss.kubernetes.io in the past, and while we did get some folks from there, it's proven to be a little harder to get traction on it. So we're looking to draft a policy. Two community members, Damini and Matesh, helped draft Google Doc, draft a policy for it. It's still in review, and we're still discussing more ideas. So if you have ideas around this, please feel free to pitch in on issue number 141 on the steering repo. This has been in discussion for quite some time now, that we are planning on setting up a travel support program for active contributors who won't be sponsored or can't be sponsored by their employers to travel to KubeCons. So we're targeting this for Amsterdam, whenever that might be, and we'll provide updates as soon as we get more information and discuss more with CNCF. Finally, we also have issue templates in the Kubernetes/steering repo to make sure like the community can propose problem statements or propose whatever ideas they have in a much more efficient manner. So you can use this, and you can also reach out to us on the public Slack channel. Feel free to like jump in any thoughts you might have regarding anything in there. We have a mailing list, steering at kubernetes.io, which is public. And if you want to discuss something privately, we have steering private at kubernetes.io. We have meetings that are public and anyone can join on first Mondays of each month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. If there is something that you would like to discuss in the meeting, especially if something that requires votes or decision making, please send an email to the mailing list beforehand so that everyone has adequate context and everyone comes prepared to the meeting. Finally, you can also file an issue in the Kubernetes/steering repo. And lastly, I just want to say that all of us are super friendly. So if there's something that's like bothering you, no matter how tiny that might be, feel free to DM us. Or if you just want to bounce thoughts off someone, and we can try and see how we can figure out problems together. And yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you so much for that update. It's really great to see the progress happening in the steering committee, and great calls to action for all of us if we want to get more involved. You are very friendly. I can attest to that as a newbie. To go back a step, Jorge, can you give us a brief update on release management?
Yes, absolutely. So, hi everyone. I'm the release lead for Kubernetes 1.18. And right now we are in week 11 of the current Kubernetes release cycle. This is hopefully the last full week for this cycle. In the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of work. Some of the most notable updates that we have is new Kubernetes patch versions have been made available. So 1.15.11, 1.16.8, 1.17.4 are out in the wild. So it is time to upgrade. Regarding Kubernetes 1.18, we are now in the period of quota. So the master branch on Kubernetes is wide open. Contributors can now merge their PRs, and everything that goes in from now on is going to be slated to Kubernetes 1.19. If anyone has any patch or PR that you think should go into 1.18.0, please feel free to propose a cherry pick of your PR. The deadline for cherry picks into 1.18.0 is end of day Pacific, this Thursday, March 19, which is today. So until today, end of day Pacific. After that, if you have any work and you still want to land it in 118, it's probably you can still propose cherry picks, but they will probably land into 118.1, which is gonna come soon, sometime soon after the .0 release. Other than that, right now the current deadline for the deadline that we are proposing for 1.18.0 is next Tuesday, March 24. If everything goes well, and hopefully nothing breaks between now and then, the world will have a new Kubernetes version out and about that everyone can use. And other big announcement that we have is the release team. At the end of each cycle, we have a retrospective where we go back and revisit things that we believe have been done very well, things that we could do better in the future. The retrospective for 118 is scheduled for April 2. Our moderator is going to be Jeffy. Thank you, Bob, very much. And possibly, if we need a second part for the retrospective, which has been the case in the past, that will be scheduled for April 6th during the SIG release weekly meeting. And those are all the updates that I have from the release team. Thank you very much.
Incredible. Thank you so much for that overview, Jorge. Getting back into the SIG updates, next up we have Alana with SIG Instrumentation.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Indeed.
Yep. Great. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Alana Hashman. I am one of the newly crowned chairs of SIG Instrumentation. And so I'm going to jump right to our update. We recently, in the past couple of weeks, have had a shift in our SIG leadership. So the first thing that I will announce is our new SIG leads. Hi, I'm one of them. Piotr is becoming an emeritus lead. Frederick is shifting from his chair role to becoming a tech lead. I am becoming a chair, as well as Han Kang, also becoming a chair, and David Ashpole was elected today as our second tech lead. So if you have any questions about SIG leadership, these are now the folks to contact, and I will have a summary of them at the end of the slides as well. For those who are not familiar with SIG instrumentation, what do we do? Well, we are responsible for all the instrumentation across the Kubernetes project. So we are a horizontal SIG. And frequently, it's kind of easy to imagine this as us covering the 3 pillars of observability. And that is what I will split our updates into. So metrics, time series data that's emitted by various components of the project, logging, which is text-based data emitted from various components, and traces, which allow us to trace requests from the beginning of their life through the end, so seeing if there's any particular issues, allowing us to debug problems that may arise at any stage of that request's lifetime. So on the metrics side, we have a metric stability framework that was accepted a few releases ago, and as of the 1.18 release, it is now in beta. We have migrated the kubelet resource metrics to use this metric stability framework, and hence the metrics endpoint has moved from an alpha endpoint to a non-alpha endpoint, which is kind of exciting for the kubelets. On the logging side, We have a structured logging cap, which was just accepted this quarter and was just moved in the past couple of weeks to implementable. So we are targeting alpha for the 1.19 release, and contributors are wanted to help out with that effort if folks are interested. Structured logs, as opposed to just regular boring old text logs, are typically emitted in a format like JSON with key values, which make them easier to parse and easier to process. On the tracing side, our distributed tracing cap was just merged again in the past quarter. And as a result, SIG API machinery has gone ahead and added context to client Go functions to help implement some of this. There is more to go. The cap is not yet in the implementable state. It is currently provisional, but that is hopefully, we're targeting implementable soon. Sub-project statuses. So Cube State Metrics, one of our sub-projects. The 1.9 series is currently released, and it is going into bug fix only status while we work towards the 2.x release. Lily tells me very emphatically that new contributors are wanted. So more info on that later in the slides. Metric server status, one of our other sub-projects. So recently, Metric Server has been working on improved documentation and installation instructions to make it easier for folks to install and use. Recently, there was an effort for triaging the backlog, and so a bunch of issues have been identified for new contributors to make that easier for folks to contribute to the project. There are 2 upcoming releases. 0.3.7 has significant improvements for the release pipeline, and 0.4.0, next major rewrite, addressing production readiness issues that have been raised. Here is a list of relevant caps. I mean, you can't click on my screen, but all of the links are available in the slides, which are the meeting notes. So if you want to take a look at, in particular, the structured logging cap and the distributed tracing cap, those are the links. And how can you contribute? Cube State Metrics is seeking new contributors. I guess I didn't really introduce Cube State Metrics, so quick summary of that project. It's effectively like a Prometheus adapter for your cluster state. So it can emit various information like pod statuses and things like that in Prometheus format, so you can consume them in your Prometheus or other vendor products. So if you'd like to help out with that, you should contact Lily. Her GitHub handle is LilyC. And then Metric Server, which provides a summary format of metrics for horizontal pod autoscalers and things like that. They are also seeking new contributors. And structured logging, also seeking new contributors for both Metric Server and structured logging. Please contact Merrick, whose GitHub handle is Sarathius. Where can you find us? I am one of the chairs. Han is also another one of the chairs. Tech leads are Frederick and David Ashpole. You can find us on Slack. That is probably the best place to find us. In our Slack, there is a link to our meeting notes, as well as our mailing list and Google group. If you subscribe to that, you will get the automatic invite to our meetings. I don't want to try to tell you the time for the meetings because daylight savings time has messed everything up. They are bi-weekly on Thursdays. Our next one is in 10 minutes, as you can hear from my reminder, but I will probably not drop so I can attend the rest of the community call. So if you have any questions, best place to reach out is on Slack, and hope to see you there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that update, Elena. Fantastic. Moving right along, we are going to SIG Service Catalog with Jonathan.
Hey. So not actually much to talk about for SIG Service Catalog. We've actually kind of had not much activity in the project the past couple months. We cut a release containing the new CRD version of Service Catalog, which is CRD based rather than the old API server implementation. And pretty much other than that, we've only been in maintenance mode. We've been fixing bugs. That's pretty much it. We don't really have anything, any new pressing features or feature sets on the docket. Given that participation in the SIG is downturned after several companies left the project, we've been trying to source new people to be interested in contributing. And we've got a couple leads on working on that, but not anything we're prepared to announce this time. So
no problem. Hey, Jonathan, could you give maybe like a boilerplate pitch for what Service Catalog covers?
So for those who don't know, Service Catalog is an implementation of the Open Service Broker API, which is an open standard for allowing cloud platforms like Kubernetes, but in a very generic sense, to provision and manage cloud resources, again, in a very generic sense, without having to know the specifics. So say you want MySQL databases to be a type that's available for provisioning on your Kubernetes cluster. You could add a MySQL service broker, and then you'd be able to provision and manage MySQL instances, but without having to know how that works. So the sort of elephant in the room is with the recent interest in operators. A lot of people are speculating, oh, what service catalog really does. So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out, is how does service catalog fit into that? Because now that we've repackaged it as being CRD based, it, I guess, is an operator, depending on the technical definition of what an operator is. I mean, it was written manually. It wasn't produced using KubeBuilder or Operator SDK, but I mean, it fits the definition, I guess. So we've been in talks with a lot of the Operator SDK and the KubeBuilder folks about what exactly the future is going to look like, because a lot of the operators people are writing have problems that Service Catalog sort of solves. Whether Service Catalog is going to be the solution to those, or people are going to write something else, that's up for discussion.
Okay, cool. So if you like a little ambiguity and some cloud service providers in Kubernetes, you might just have the SIG. Thank you, Jonathan. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that intro and wrap up. Moving right along, we've got Saad in Sig Storage.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see that?
We can, thank you.
Okay, so let me start presenting. So my name is Saad Ali. I'm one of the co-chairs for Sig Storage. So first up, I wanted to talk about some of the governance updates that Sig Storage has gone through recently. As some of you are aware, our co-chair, Brad Childs, passed away late last year. And so we put together a little memorial for him. Feel free to take a look at that. I'll share the slides in the agenda. So we were looking to fill his seat. And in doing so, what we decided to do was follow the model of other SIGs and adopt not just 2 chairs, but 2 tech leads as well. And for the chairs, I'm going to be continuing as a chair, and Sheng Yang has stepped up to take the other chair. And tech leads Michelle Wu and Jan Safranek are going to be our tech leads. They've both been working in Sig Storage for a very long time. If any of you have interacted with Sig Storage, I'm sure you're familiar with their work. So join me in congratulating them when you get a chance. So highlights from the 1.17 release, which went out late last year. There were 3 big features. One was CSI topology. This is a feature to allow CSI drivers to surface to Kubernetes what their internal topology looks like. What this means is that some volumes may not be equally accessible to all nodes within a cluster. And we now have a mechanism by which a storage system can surface that information up to Kubernetes so that Kubernetes can make intelligent scheduling decisions using that. And so that functionality is now moved to GA. The second big feature was volume snapshots. This is something that we had in alpha for a long time. It allows a Kubernetes user to use just the Kubernetes API to trigger a snapshot on a volume rather than going around Kubernetes and interacting directly with the storage system. We moved that functionality to beta in 1.17. This was a significant rewrite and breaks a lot of the API between alpha and beta. So if you are using the alpha, please take a look at this and figure out what the differences are. As we move to GA, we're anticipating much fewer API changes. So don't worry about that. And then finally, CSI migration. CSI is the new way for Kubernetes to integrate with third-party block and file storage systems. We have a legacy way of doing it, which is in-tree volume plugins. We're kind of putting all new features into CSI, but we want to provide a seamless migration story for in-tree volume plugins to CSI. And the core functionality to enable that seamless migration has moved to beta last quarter. And now all the different cloud providers who had in-tree volume plugins are working on writing adapters to plug into that to enable that seamless transition. That includes GCE, AWS, Azure, and vSphere. Talking about this release that's going out in the next couple of weeks, the big features that SIG Storage delivered here are raw block volumes. This allows for a volume to be surfaced up in a container as a block device instead of a mounted file system. The benefit of this is there are some databases, for example, or software-defined storage systems that prefer to interact directly with a raw block device rather than through a file system for performance reasons. They can do that now. Volume cloning was another feature that we moved to GA. This allows you to use the Kubernetes API to create a duplicate of a volume that you have. This functionality moved to GA, and as it'll work as long as your underlying CSI driver supports it. And then the third feature that we moved to GA was the CSI driver Kubernetes API object. This is for CSI driver authors. It's a mechanism by which your driver can customize how Kubernetes interacts with it. For example, if you don't need a volume attach, you can instruct Kubernetes to skip attach for your driver. It also makes it a little bit easier for users to discover what drivers are installed by doing a kubectl get CSI drivers call. And then finally, we introduced a couple of features in alpha in 1.18. The big one is Windows CSI support. So CSI is the mechanism that we are using for extending Kubernetes storage. So far on Windows, it's been a challenge because Windows containers are limited in terms of being privileged and being able to do mount propagation. In order to get around that, the SIG has been working on a storage proxy that you can deploy on the host that acts as a bridge between the host and the CSI container. And this enables CSI drivers on Windows. That proxy has gone to alpha, or will be going to alpha as part of this 1.18 release. And then finally, we have some work that we've been doing on the volume permissions code for folks who've been using volume permission changing through Kubernetes. You probably hit issues around just it taking so long to mount because it has to go and touch every single file and directory. This becomes a huge problem if you have a ton of files and directories in your volume. And so we're introducing a new flag that allows you to allows Kubernetes to be a little bit smarter when it's doing this. It'll only go through and change ownership if the root ownerships do not match. So it'll do it the first time, and then every subsequent time it'll be a lot faster. If you are interested in any of this, please join us in our bi-weekly meetings. The next meeting is going to be next Thursday on the 26th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be doing a wrap-up of the 1.18 release, getting a final status update of what made it into the release and what did not. And then the subsequent meeting, we're going to be doing a planning session for what's going to go into the 1.19 release. Those meetings tend to be the most crucial because it's where we plan what the SIG is going to work on, who gets to work on what. So if you're interested in participating at all, those would be the meetings to attend. We have a couple of mechanisms, forums that you can communicate with us. One is a Slack channel. There's a number of people that are answering questions on that. Feel free to go there and ask any questions you might have. And then we have a mailing list as well. That's all I have for SIG storage. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. That's a great update. Fantastic. So moving right along, we have the Code of Conduct Committee. Tasha is going to give us an update from that team. Tasha, are you out there? Moving right along, maybe she'll be able to join later. We're rolling right into announcements, being really efficient on time. So quick recap of things. The last update on KubeCon is that it has been delayed, as we know. It's targeting right now July, August timeframe. There will be some in-person contributor summit there. That's the last update from the team. But there will be more virtual meetings in the meantime. So keep reaching out to peers if you need to connect in the short term, long term. Something will come together once there's some more certainty there. But be especially appreciative for anyone who runs events in the tech world right now. They are going through quite a lot, and they do incredible work so that we can have a seemingly seamless time. So sending a lot of love out to everybody there. Thank you for what you do if you're listening. Next up, the next host for this next meeting for April will be Taylor. Taylor is an SRE at Disney. He's listed himself as a book fan, and I did a little internet stalking and found out he's reading a great book that maybe he can give us a book review of next month. Why Are You Yelling? The Art of Productive Disagreement. Taylor, please, give that shout out next month. That's definitely why I'm going to show up amongst the Kubernetes things. And he's also the release lead for 1.19. So very excited to have him. There are some additional updates coming in. So regarding KubeCon, thank you to all our ecosystem tech events organizers who are dealing with very complicated logistics right now. Absolutely. To bring us towards the end of this meeting, we've got shout outs listed. There are a ton. We've shifted to a month over month in this meeting, so there's a ton of shout outs to people. But for those that aren't familiar with it, there's a shout outs channel in our Slack community. Be sure to highlight people that have been kind to you, that have helped you with things, or just stuff you appreciate about being a member of this community. And when this is sent out after, take some time to go through and see specifically what was helpful. It's really inspiring to see new participants and longtime participants appreciating each other. With that, unless Tasha, were you able to join? Okay, we'll get an update out by email there. Are there any open other announcements that we should have? Now's the time. All right, all quiet on the Western Front here. So we'll take some time to update the agenda and then send that out to both Discourse and the Kubernetes Dev mailing list. Thank you all for being participants. Really appreciate having you here. I hope you all have a wonderful time at home. Send more pet pictures on Twitter and in Slack. And we will see you next month or at your local SIG meetup. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Happy Thursday.